Well, welcome. We are here interviewing Ntsikelelo Mzibomvu. He is one of our South African authors. And what is really fascinating and wonderful about this interview is look where Ntsikelelo is sitting. He is literally on the rooftop of Johannesburg. I just think that is amazing. So, so we're very thrilled to have Ntsikelelo with us. Ntsikelelo and we've known each other about 4 years now, just 3 or 4 years. We met at the Four Ways Community Chamber. In fact, we met through a mutual friend, Luyanda. We have to give a shout out to her. She's an amazing.
Definitely shout out.
And thank you to Luyanda for introducing us. And but we're here especially to focus on the books that you've written, because you aren't just the author of one book, you are an author. And I always say, you're not an author until you've written more than one book. Until then, you've just been playing. And I can say that because I've written one book, so I've definitely just been dabbled. I don't have author status yet.
I just think you're being too hard on yourself.
Oh, thanks. I love that. Thanks, Ntsikelelo. You've written at least 4 books, am I right?
I'm on my 5th. Yeah,
I thought there was one pending, so we'll come to that. What is it about writing that you love? What got you into writing, and what made you feel this was something that you really wanted to do?
It's quite simple. It was reading. I just read a lot. And I read a lot of material that was, it also dovetailed into why I went into personal development, but I just read a lot. And when you read a lot, you eventually start developing perspective, and you want to share that perspective. And because you've been influenced by writing, it becomes then the preferred method of sharing, So that's exactly what happened to me, all the novels I've read, all the kiddies books that I've read, even newspaper clips, everything that I've read actually contributed to me becoming a writer. So a whole lot of reading led me to becoming a writer.
And that comes through in your books as well, because you've come across as somebody who's done an incredible amount of research, and that you've then sieved that through your own experience. And sharing that with others. So there's some really important thinking that you've grasped. So
definitely
journey in terms of your own personal development that's led you to this place of saying, this is something that I want to share.
And that's very true. Fortunately, I've been able to develop critical thinking skills over time, and looking at problems and solving problems required those skills. So the books that I've written actually are there to help others by showing them things that they cannot readily see because they haven't developed the eye to see them, or the mentality that is required for them to understand. So what I literally do is I simplify things. I put things in, I take complex ideas and I deliver them in layman's terms. And for me to do that effectively, I had to experience. And this is what I love about personal development. It allows you to experience the things that you learn so that you can prove them yourself to be right or wrong. So you're not only observing other people and how they live, you get to also go inside and observe you and how you react to the material. So definitely that has been a major key in terms of my writing, or a major influence in my writing, to be able to simplify things for others, to bring about wisdom, as you would say.
Lovely. Because it's wisdom for others, but it's also been processed through your own experience and your own story. And
definitely.
And also the South African story.
Yes.
that's very core to who you are and the context you find yourself in and your readers.
Definitely, it's a matter of identity. You know, I found a lot of the you know the more the Western books to be a bit detached from our reality. You know, when you look at those personal development books, they assume that there's certain stages that you've gone through, or they assume that you're at a certain place as a society or as a reader, and only to realize that no, there's actually gaps that need to be bridged. So it was very important for me to write books that are within a South African context, a context that is rooted in our apartheid history, in our new democracy, and in our everyday life going forward, and creating a link, because for some reason we've kind of pretended as if there isn't a common thread that goes through this time period. You know, we almost feel like when democracy came through, we just restarted and everything was forgotten and we were automatically different people. And that is not true. And so the residual effects of that period, we live with them today. So I had to make sure that when I write my books, I'm able to help people transition psychologically and emotionally from that period into the new democracy so that they can start enjoying the fruits of the democracy. Because the truth be told, we haven't healed as a nation from our past, and we haven't even discovered, only few people have discovered how to heal, and a lot have been covering things up. That's why when we go through difficult times, we get exposed. You know, and like right now, we are being exposed as a country for who we are, and it's unfortunate because people don't even know the root causes, or if they do know the root causes, they don't know the solution. So, and that is what I write for. I try to say, listen, this problem is going to be with us for a while. At some point, we're going to have to get down to basics. At some point, we're going to have to look at self-actualization tools in order to help us overcome these blockages that we've developed over the years.
And that's reflected, and I just want to sort of walk a little bit through the journey of your books. So
Sure.
the first book that you wrote is Beyond Democracy, Igniting the South African Renaissance. And that's exactly what
Right.
I'm speaking to now. And you pick up this word renaissance in your other books as well. It's obviously a word that ignited something for you. What
Mm.
is it about that word, and what is it about renaissance that is so important for you?
The whole concept of rebirth, you know, if we really, if, you know, for me, it was really dying as a country to the old ways, you know, really, and being born as new people. We haven't given ourselves a chance to die. And I don't mean that literally, but I mean that emotionally and also spiritually and even the way we think more than anything else. You know, our thinking process has to die. Racism has to die. Poverty has to die. Um, the education system that is not creating critical thinkers has to die. I can go on and on, you know. So those things have to die so that we can be reborn as, you know, in a new perspective, in a new way of being, you know, so that we can start now enjoying the new society that we're trying to. We just a combination of a new society and an old society, you know. So that's why things are not working. You know, we've dragged along the old stuff. That stuff has to die, and for it to die, we have to be conscious. We have to make deliberate and conscious interventions that will help us overcome that. We need to take deliberate steps. We have to put our heads, you know, on the guillotine and chop off those ideas that still work against us till this day. So the whole and I throw it back to the, you know, to, you know, historical context as well. You know, when you look at the Dark Ages, where it all started from, you know, the era of the time was not working for the people. You know, it wasn't. It was very oppressive. and the, you know, knowledge seeking was very limited. If you were a seeker of knowledge, you could even face death. You know, when you look at the arts, you look at engineering, you look at science, that period, if you weren't following whatever the kings and the queens were saying was the way, you would literally risk death. And it took courageous people to say, no, that way of thinking has to go away. I will become the next best artist. I will show the truth. I will shed light. And they risk their lives for it. So we are back years later in 2020, and we're suffering the same thing, where we actually have to say, some of us have to say, no, we have to move out of this darkness. We need a rebirth. And we are also doing it at the risk of being excluded, or not listened to, or because it obviously just disturbs the status quo. You know, it disturbs because the power base benefits from people being blinded, or from not seeking knowledge and wisdom and enlightenment. You know, so for me, I'm at that point where we say history is repeating itself again, and we need we need a new level of rebirth.
You speak like a revolutionary, Ntsikelelo.
maybe I am a bit.
Maybe you are. Maybe you are. But what I get from your books is that the revolution starts with us, and I don't want it to diminish the importance of the social economic environment and context that you keep coming back to, and the changes that you expect and demand and call for here in South Africa, and maybe even across the world, because these glaring areas are becoming more and more apparent across the world in terms of where disparities and darkness, you know, we talk about the dark ages, where those still exist. But I appreciate that your interest is in empowering us, that if we start with our own thinking, we have something in our control to be able to do something with. And you actually focus, so your next two books start with this Thinking Ghetto. So the one is Thinking Ghetto Genius, and the other is Thinking Ghetto Entrepreneur. So where does this Thinking Ghetto come from? And how does that relate to this way of thinking that I've been talking about, and that you are so passionate about?
So, I mean, coming from the township, it was very easy for me to see the effects of apartheid, because they were just right in front of me. And if you look at apartheid, it was a system that had psychological effects, it had physical implications, you know, and also spiritual implications. And for me, it was, so the first place to fix should be where it was all messed up. So being the ghetto. So, and also to bring about a sense of self-worth for the township child. You know, if you know, there's a negative connotation to the township because of its history. And if we can't get people out of the township, then maybe we should use a sort of a psychological regentrification, you know, and give it some worth. So, you know, bring the type of thinking that will then say to the township child, listen, we understand you are here, we understand what's happening to you on a daily basis, but it doesn't have to end like this. It doesn't have to continue to be like this. And not that the information is just limited to the township child, as you said. It's relevant to everybody in South Africa, but I needed to create a sense of identity and pride around that. And then the second book, Thinking Ghetto Entrepreneur, was, okay, cool, now that you understand the environment that you're in, now that you understand what's happening inside your mind and outside, you still have to eat, you still have to live. How do you start now using the thinking that you've developed to also then now add on entrepreneurial skills to your arsenal? so that you can, in the environment that you are in, you are able to turn it around, because high unemployment is a reality. And there's also a lot of dropout cases. So how do we then become entrepreneurial in terms of our thinking? And because I believe that the thinking of, you can't really teach somebody to be an entrepreneur, but you can teach them how to think like an entrepreneur. And that will lead them to become entrepreneurs themselves, because I think that's a personal journey. So my approach has been very practical in terms of, I don't just want people to engage in personal development, but I also want it to work for them, just like it is working for me. I also had to go through the very same steps and become entrepreneurial so that I could also be able to survive, because otherwise I'd also be, in crap, without a job, without a stat, and. But I'm saying, listen, there's another way out. And it was well timed, because now we are in a situation where employment is fast not becoming an option anymore. So now actually we need to start looking at these books and saying, hey, maybe this guy had something going on here. Maybe he was onto something. And so what I did was, more recently, was I combined the three books, your Beyond Democracy, your Thinking Ghetto, and your Thinking Ghetto Entrepreneur, into one book. So all of those are in one book now, and that is my latest work, the Reimagining Myself. And that we launched last year in June. Yeah.
In fact, there's a great story about how that book came about. Won't you tell us that story? I think it's you'd written these three books, and then this wonderful person in your life came along, and I'd love to. There was a whole sequence of events that led
Yeah.
to that writing of Reimagining Myself. Won't you just share that with us?
So so how Reimagining Myself came about was, I met a guy named Luvuyo Matasa, in brackets Mandela, because he changed his surname recently. And we started doing some workshops in different townships. And so he found me already doing workshops, and he said, no man, listen, I love what you're doing. Let's partner. So we tried to do a couple of workshops together. So then he started reading all three books. And after reading all three books, he gave me a call and he said, hey man, listen, I think you shouldn't separate these books. I think they should be one book. And I said, I thought of the idea. I thought it was good, but I was like, kind of brushed it off. And I was like, nah, like, whatever, I'll think about it. And but this idea just kept building in my head. So in 2018, I had just written my fourth book. It's an art book called The Path to Great Joy, which was in collaboration with a visual artist, Great Joy. And we had just finished that project. And I was sitting at home, and he told me that, and then he came back from Durban. He was in Durban, and then he came back from Durban, and he told me that, listen, I'm part of an organization now called Reimagine South Africa. And I asked him, okay, so tell me more about this Reimagine South Africa. And he says to me, listen, they have three pillars. And these three pillars speak to the three books that you've written. So one is the political settlement, which speaks to, the democratic progression. And then the second one is emotional settlement, which speaks to what they tried to achieve with the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, and they shut it as soon as they realized that it was terrible. It was a terrible idea. And then the last is about, the economic part of it, which then speaks to the entrepreneurial part of your book. So all these three books seemingly are the pillars. And I said, shucks. So
You did
what a
say
coincidence. What a coincidence. It was that amazing. It felt like all these years I'd just been preparing for this move. And I said, okay, cool. I'll come back to you, let me think about this. And I went and like I said, I just written one book. So I was supposed to be on a break, and I just hopped on to rewriting all three books, and I wrote Reimagining Myself obviously when in partnership with Reimagine South Africa, as or to as an organization, or with them in mind, rather, yeah.
And
So yes, and that's
it's a
and that's
story
how
because
and
it
that's how
also,
that
I love this sort of connecting with somebody and this serendipity that happens
serendipity.
lives on
Yeah,
occasions,
yeah.
and that brings so many threads together, and then you sort of like, I'm completely where I'm meant to be at the right time in the zone, and this incredible sense of purpose being aligned with people and with an organization that is actually, so you can actually see the practical outflow of your book, which is also something that is so important for you.
Definitely. I mean, it just, sometimes when, as you're on the journey, because it's never easy, you even question, what it is that you're doing, and I guess those moments of serendipity are there to remind us that now there is a bigger picture, and maybe you are called for something significant, and maybe what you're investing in is worthy, so it gives us life. Those are the moments that definitely give us life.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the way you've expressed it. It's so beautiful. So if you were to kind of put into a nutshell, and maybe I'm putting you on the spot here, but what in essence, out of these 4 books, and I know there's another one sort of hanging, and we'll come back to that, but if we just sum up these 4 books, what is it? I know you want to change people's lives. That's really the core, the essence of what you're wanting to do. What do you want people to do as a result of reading your books? What would be happening in their lives, given that they've now read Ntsikelelo Mzibomvu's books?
It all comes down to, being. Action comes from being. So the book is there to influence being, and so once the change has happened at the being level, then the rest is just whatever the person wants to do, because the books are there to liberate. They're not, there's nothing that I'm going to suggest to a person. It's the tool. So how a person uses the tool is entirely up to them, but it's an enabler. So if it enables them to do something, if it enables them to get up and decide to work on their health, to get up, work on their fitness, if it means getting up and starting a business, if it means getting up and making that video or singing that song or writing that book, or that's all I want, because it's an enabler. And that's why my part starts and stops at that part, of enabling. Beyond that, it's a personal journey, and I can keep on creating more tools for people to, as they move on their journeys, but what that journey is entirely up to them. And I feel that is the core of freedom, for people to be able to choose and be who they want to be.
I love that, liberate. We find ourselves in all kinds of prisons, don't we? And sometimes of our own making. So that this would give me an opportunity to truly be myself and true to myself. There seems an incredible promise in that. And I want to just go back to the book that you wrote or co-wrote with a visual artist. Was it called Great Joy?
Yeah, Great Joy. Great Joy.
And I think I just feel like that would be the automatic response to being liberated, is great joy.
Definitely.
But Ntsikelelo, you do work with artists quite a bit. Won't you just share a little bit about that work with us? Because it's also about publishing, and you bring your writing. So there's this artistic collaboration that you bring. tell us more about that?
Yeah, so that for me is my expression of liberation, because I love the arts. You know, I love visual arts. I could have been a painter, I guess. My uncle was a painter, and he pretty much trained a lot of my friends who are professional artists right now. And but I never picked up the brush. So for me now, it's a matter of using my artistic abilities to collaborate with them and tell their stories as artists, because we find them in galleries, we see them on hanging on walls and making houses beautiful, but their story is never really told. So people only know their artist statements and what the show is about, but they don't know about the man behind the painting. So I felt, you know what, let me run projects with artists where not only is it autobiographical, but also we get to tackle social issues around the artist's work. So with great joy, we were discussing toxic masculinity, and we was speaking about the alpha male. It was we coded it the alpha male inquiry, where we look at the double-sided coin of the whole alpha male concept, where it could either liberate a man to becoming all that he can be, or it could turn him into a monster. So, and we looked at how society also contributes towards that, and that it's actually a societal problem and not just a male problem. That even our mothers, when we're boys, if ever I get slapped in the street and I come back crying to my mom will go tell me to go beat the crap out of that guy. So we're being trained as men to be violent from a very, very, very young age, and that is part of being alpha male. And so when we now have to deal with domestic issues, we are so trained with violence that when we're now dealing with beings that talk a lot and that can also say hurtful things, the only response is...
Which beings are those in Ntsikelelo? I don't know beings like that.
Neither do I.
Well said, well said.
So, and then we wonder why there's domestic violence, because the one is taught to speak out and let their anger out in one way, and the other one is taught to beat out and let their anger out in another way. When the two combine, it's disaster. So, and I say this also, I have to mention that, we don't talk about it as much. There's also, just as much as there's toxic masculinity, there's also toxic femininity. And I know some people will be like, that's not a concept. I'm like, listen, there's just toxic people everywhere. They can either be male or female, so there's both of these problems that we have to deal with as a society, as societal problems. But what's happening right now is both parties are busy throwing shots at each other, as they always have. So the private fight has now reached the public space. And now it's men are trash versus women are this. Well, just that the difference is men don't say it out loud, but in their private spaces, they will complain about women. And women, on the other hand, will also do the same. And, so we are busy fueling these problems, and we're not actually coming down to the core of it in terms of how we've structured our society, and when we're busy using isms and all these titles and these words like patriarchy and feminism, and no, we just have a societal problem. That's what we have. And we need to come back as people and start sorting that out. Anyway, so I divert. Coming back to the path to great joy. So that book is about now, how do we as men start using self-actualization and personal development to chart our own paths to great joy, and so basically there is a bit of a link between the work that I've done before and then now bringing it into the art space, and then using art and putting it in an artistic way, and using art to still talk about the same message of self-actualization, because I feel that it is a cure to most of our problems as a society. And the reason, and just to close it off, I talk a lot about society, but the reason why I do that is because I come from the point that society is made up of individuals. And for us to change society, we have to change the thinking of the individuals that make up the society. So we cannot separate the two, so yeah.
Makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. So you are a revolutionary.
I guess unintendedly so.
Ntsikelelo, what are you doing now? What is stirring in the pot at the moment?
So what's stirring in the pot at the moment? I'm a manager of an art studio. I manage Temba Kumalo Art Studio, and which is downstairs. I'm at the top of August House building downtown Johannesburg, and we are preparing for his solo show for the year. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we were supposed to do some traveling, had to do some Italy and some US, but well, that's not gonna happen. Not this year anyway. But we're looking at doing a solo show around October. His works are amazing. Do check him out. He's on Instagram, Temba Kumalo. He's one of the more refined artists that Joburg has to offer. In fact, I think the country has to offer. So I definitely say look out for him. He is definitely coming for that spot. And yeah, and also I'm busy working on other projects, talking to a couple of other influential artists in terms of doing books with them. So yeah, so there's a I can't reveal that as yet,
Watch this
but
space.
watch the space. So there's definitely a couple of things that I'm doing, and I'm also building my profile, because I mean, as authors, we're kind of very silent, so now I am pushing to get into as many spaces as possible using digital means, so that more people get to know about me, and more people get to purchase my book, so that I can actually, continue the business that I've built and grow it.
How can people get hold of your books at the moment?
So at the moment, I'm selling through social media and my website. So if you can find me on social media, Ntsikelelo Mzibomvu. I'm on all platforms. On Instagram, it's Ntsikelelo Mzi. So I post, so people can deposit, can transfer, can e-wallet, and I will postnet their books and or use speed services. So that seems to be working right now. And also they can buy it directly from the website, but I don't know, not a lot of people like doing that, like putting credit card details on private websites. I figured. So yeah, people can get in touch with me, and on WhatsApp as well. Yeah, I do a lot of business on WhatsApp.
So we'll just put your details as part of this interview, and then people can get hold of you in those ways. So that's great. Ntsikelelo, I just so enjoyed you sitting on the top of your building in Joburg. I'm sitting in my study with the lights getting lower and lower, but as we sit here in our different places, I just really appreciate the heart, the passion that you share with, and that comes with a real desire to revolutionize our society through each person. And that means that we have to take responsibility for what we think and how we think, and that you've created these tools in your books for us to be able to walk that path, and that you don't write just from your research. It's well researched, but it's also through your story. And so that adds so much credibility and depth to the book. So thank you for sharing this time with us. And I wish you every success and wellness.
Thank you, Lee. I appreciate it. Those are really kind words. I'll take them to heart. And thank you very much for having me on your platform. And I really, really appreciate it. It's been time well spent.
Fantastic. Good job.
Thank you. Awesome. And